Welcome, I'm Jon Caldara, president of the Independence Institute and your devil's advocate. I thought we'd spend a half hour with the man who wants to be your governor, Bob Beauprez. Good to see you again, Bob.
Good to see you, John. Thank you.
All right, now we talked here at least a while back when you were running during the primary, and you said, no, we think we can win this primary. Let me ask you first about that primary. There were four good guys running in that Republican primary. Democrats always seem to miss those awful primaries, you know, that Tancredo versus Dan Mays, McGinnis thing, or even a couple years before that, you and Mark Holtzman. You know, those were tough primaries. This one was a four-way primary. It seemed pretty clean. It didn't seem destructive to whoever was going to win, which you.
Yeah, no, and even beyond that, immediately, very immediately on primary night, I got a call from all three of my opponents, and all three of them said, congratulations, tell me how I can help. They immediately endorsed, and they've been true to their word. They've stepped forward. That's because, John, in this one, unlike some we've had in the past, the focus from all four of us in that primary was on Jon Hickenlooper and his failure to lead this state.
There was a story about the Republican Governors Association playing on your behalf inside the primary, unlike what a lot of Democrats have done here in Colorado, which is play in the Republican primary. Here, Republicans played in the Republican primary, but a lot of people got their noses bent on that one. Was that an appropriate thing to do?
No, and I said so. That's not what any affiliate, anything to do with the Republican Party should stay out of primaries. We knew nothing about that. In fact, they had told me they were going to stay out of the primary. That's what they should do. They should leave it to Republican primary voters to solve their own choices and make their own nominee. Well, I found out about it after the fact, and I too was very upset about that. It was just I think it was just a dumb thing for them to do, and it was pointless. When they did it, it was in the last like 72 hours and in a limited basis. I don't know that it had any effect really at all.
Especially when we had all mail-in ballots.
Yeah, it was done.
Right.
So no, I think it was just, this is why people get upset with the process and with the party, and dumb.
This is now, after this, the whole election changes, because before you have to convince registered Republicans that you can win. Now you got a much tougher job. You got to convince all registered voters you can win. So let me ask you about first of all the campaign. Now's the time where you lie and you say, I'm enjoying this. This is a terrific event. So how are you enjoying it?
Well, they're invigorating and they're exhausting at the same time. You know that, John. You've been around them enough. The invigorating part is when you see people excited and you meet people and they want you to win, and they encourage you and they write checks to you, and you feel that they, like you, want this state to be better than it is right now, and they believe that you're the guy that can lead it. So that's invigorating. But it is the longest job interview you could ever possibly go through. It tests your emotions, it tests you physically and mentally. But you know, we keep our eye on the prize, and I've been through it before. What's
a little different, though, I've run a lot of campaigns, but mine have always been issues that I run for an initiative or against something that's on the ballot. It's very different. I think it's easy to take shots at any politician because you're angry at them if they're not with you on a very personal level. But it is a personal process. You're asking the voters for a date, and there's a lot of rejection. How's the family handling it?
I've got the greatest wife in the world. You know, Claudia was ready to do this even before I was ready to do it. So her being so supportive, all our kids, even our grandkids, you've seen them on the trail. Well, it helps tremendously.
Let me ask you this, because I've known you and Claudia for a long time, and there are a lot of kind of political couples. And you know political couples. You got the real thing, all right? It's obvious, and I've known you for a lot of years. You have something that's really strong. Does it worry you when you see, your friend Owens split up while he was in office? This current governor split up while he was in office. It's not an easy job.
No, but I guess you never know. But if I know anything, it's that Claudia loves me and I love her, and we know who we are, and we're in this very much together, John. She is, in the past, I have referred to her as the angel on my shoulder, and she's always been that way. Just an absolute rock. And anybody who's been through this probably can identify, but sometimes you do need that one person where you can close the door, you can be yourself, you can let it go. And she's always there for me and propped me back up and sends me out the door again.
So the rumors that she's going to divorce you if you lose, exaggerated. Is that what I'm hearing?
Don't take that bet.
Right.
Don't take that bet.
Let me ask you some policy questions. You start off with that. Do you or don't you support building the Keystone Pipeline?
I do.
I don't want to put you in any tough position here, but I'm just curious. Inquiring people need to know.
John, I said
no. I really need an answer on this one.
It's a yes.
Do you support it or not?
It is an
Give me an
absolute.
answer. Do you support it or don't you support it?
It's an absolute yes. And I said a long time ago, this should have been the easiest yes Barack Obama or anybody else ever came to. It's pro-jobs, it's pro-energy, it leads us to that energy
What's
independence.
What's Colorado's connection? When Hickenlooper said, hey, I don't want to piss off anybody in D.C., why is it important to Colorado? Whether yes or no, why does this impact Colorado?
It's important because it's part of our nation's energy program. This is jobs for America, it's energy independence for America, it's affordable energy for America. It brings energy, oil in this case, from our closest neighbor, Canada, a friendly neighbor, by the way, that if we're going to be North American energy independent, this makes perfect sense. It's all too obvious. It brings that energy into the United States where we can refine it and use it to our benefit and our people's benefit. This is a slam dunk. The reason the governor struggled with it is because his friend Barack Obama struggles with it, and he doesn't want to upset Barack Obama.
Now, this is a Colorado election, but let's be honest. You are blessed with a very unpopular president at this point. I mean, I kind of saw when you got into office the first time, there was a wave after 9/11, which I think was helpful to you in that narrow victory. And then years later, there was a wave the other way when you ran for governor the first time, and you were swimming upstream. Talk to me a little bit about the connection between Hickenlooper and Barack Obama, because there are similarities, there are differences, and that comment that I don't want to piss off anyone in D.C., I'm wondering who that someone was. Are you going to try to tie Hickenlooper to this current administration?
Yes.
Why? Why is that fair?
Well, because when you see one, you see the other. You see the same indecisiveness. You see the same unwillingness to lead. You see the same attempt to not take responsibility for their actions, that same deflection. And clearly his statement about the XL pipeline was directed at Barack Obama. I don't want to upset anybody in Washington, D.C. Who could that possibly be? His president. He stood with him on Obamacare. He's the one who brought him here, proudly so, in 2008 for the nomination of the Democrat Party and wrapped his arms around him. Yeah, this is, I refer to it as the Obama-Looper regime. And it's the same actions from both men in their roles as governor and president that have stalled this recovery, that have made it painfully slow and sluggish, and have led to the lack of trust in government and the failure of leadership on their part.
When it comes to not making a decision, nothing screams that more than Nathan Dunlap.
Absolutely.
And when Nathan Dunlapped the Keystone Pipeline, I was really amazed. Now, I went back and listened to part of an interview that Jon Hickenlooper had about why he gave this temporary reprieve or temporary thing, and he listed all these wonderful anti-death penalty arguments. All of them were very, very good, in fact. And he spent a long time saying why the death penalty is a bad idea, and I'm actually sympathetic to that. You know, I'm not anti-death penalty, but I gotta say the reasons against the death penalty are compelling. And I don't know why he didn't make that call and then use those same arguments. That man, that mass murderer, will come back up in a few years. This governor punted it to the next. If you're the next governor, what do you do with it?
Justice is served and he'll be executed. That's the law of the state of Colorado, and I'll take an oath to carry out the law, and I'll do it. I was amazed as you were. Now, let me stipulate, there are perfectly good moral reasons to be both pro-death penalty and anti-death penalty. He chose neither one. It underscores his inability or, excuse me, his unwillingness to make a decision. I wouldn't pretend that this is an easy one, but he took an oath to do just that, to enforce the laws of the state of Colorado, If he won't, I will. Justice will be served. It's been denied to those families for 20 years.
I would even go as far as been denied to the families of the killer as well. They're in limbo as well. All right, let's bring it back to Colorado. You served many years, 4 years in Congress. You got a pretty good feel for that. Colorado government is different. And I think where we've seen this void of leadership, or someone, Ritter, who was, I think, a terrific man, a good man, but he was a city DA and not ready for an entire state and how bills work and leadership on that level. Hickenlooper, who was a very popular mayor, and he's, in my mind, the best mayor Colorado has. He's the mayor of Colorado, or the governor of Denver, however you want to put it. But when elevated to this other new realm, he had no experience. You've had no experience inside state government. What's gonna be different?
Well, I have had experience in Colorado. I've been here all my life and run various businesses in Colorado, as you know. And that's the question I get about Jon Hickenlooper when I get outside of it, outside of the metro area. You framed it very well. And people put it just this way. Does he realize he's no longer mayor of Denver? Because they feel abandoned. We had counties that actually wanted to leave our state. That's a pretty strong statement. I just got back from the Western Slope. Those people aren't just a little unhappy, a little unsettled. They're flat angry. And they're angry at the leadership, or lack thereof, of Jon Hickenlooper. They feel ignored. They feel abandoned. They feel used. In some cases.
How so? Give me an example. Give me some texture.
Let me give you a real concrete example. I was in Grand Junction. We know that the energy industry was robust over there, and now it's not. Unemployment in Mesa County is among the highest in the state. So hearing from people in the energy industry saying, I lost my job, I had to go out of state, my husband had to go out of state, you expected those stories, and I heard them. But the ripple effect is what I think really makes the point. I'm walking to my car, getting ready to leave an event over there. A gentleman calls my name. I turn back. He shakes my hand. He says, you know, you're right about the effect of losing our jobs over here. He said, I teach music. I was talking about energy. He said, oh, I teach guitar lessons in my basement. When the energy jobs left, I lost 30 students. 30 students. Pretty big hit. $30,000 to him. That makes the point, John, is that when you either kill jobs, and the Obama-Looper regime have killed energy jobs and trying to do some more of it, when you kill jobs, or worse still, when opportunity goes other states that otherwise would be here, that we could embrace and create that kind of opportunity, that's wrong too. And that's what people sense about Barack Obama and Jon Hickenlooper, is their policies, or their lack of ability and willingness to lead, has chased opportunity that otherwise would be in Colorado out of here.
We have friends who own a sawmill out in rural Colorado, and because of Obamacare cancellations and now the rural electric hike that's coming,
that Jon Hickenlooper signed.
Yeah, they closed. So they're out of business, and their folks are unemployed. Let me talk a little bit about that energy business. Jared Polis had 2 anti-energy measures, fracking issues, on the ballot. The industry put up a couple fracking measures on the other side. And then the grand compromise, what the Denver Post called real leadership, was able to get this compromise together. You ought to be somewhat complimented on this. You know, these were pulled not because of some grand compromise, but there was a scare that if these were on the ballot, it was going to help you and it was going to help Cory Gardner. And that was the worry. And if you read the Wall Street Journal, that's the reason Polis was pressured, not here, but in D.C. to pull him.
Sure, a lot of this was political. And am I glad that the Polis initiatives didn't go forward, that they're not on the ballot? Yeah, there's a big piece of me that is. But here's the big mistake that Jon made, in addition to all the political calculus. When he cut this grand compromise, he formed this commission that still has life, that keeps uncertainty out there in the marketplace. That was the biggest problem to begin with, John, is this uncertainty, this anxiety, what's next, what's yet to come. And instead of just knocking it in the head and making it go away once and for all, and it looked like this was the environment to do that in, Jon creates this commission and breathes life back into something that should have been chased away. So it goes on.
In other words, 3 months from now, win or lose, these fracking issues would be decided. Industry would have a clear-cut answers to their questions of whether to invest, whether not to invest, to play in Colorado, how to play in Colorado, if you would. And it would have, that issue would have been lanced. It would have been over and done with. Might have been difficult, but people would have made a decision. Now we've got another couple years to have the same sort of uncertainty.
I think you mentioned it earlier. This is very much in a way like the Dunlap decision. I can't make up my mind clearly one way or the other, yes, no. So I say maybe and kick the can down the road to the next governor. The next governor will deal with this, and I'll deal with it firmly.
What does that mean, I'll deal with it firmly? Give
well,
some
I am very pro. This, instead of punishing the people that have created the technology, found the resources, the ability to make us energy independent, that's not a pipe dream anymore. That's a reality. That creates opportunity. That's a wonderful thing for us. We ought to be celebrating that. The fact that we've never been able to produce energy, utilize energy cleaner, safer, more efficiently in the history of the world than we can right now. We ought to celebrate that, not punish that, but that's exactly what we're doing right now. It's kind of death by 1,000 cuts. I'll champion the genius, the capability of people and the blessings we've got here in Colorado. I'm not going to push them away or pretend that they're somehow a bad thing. That's what leadership is.
All right, so you keep talking about leadership, and for those of us who are junkies, all right, I know exactly what you're saying, that even if I disagree with the governor, having decisions made, if I disagree with the president, at least having decisions made, and we were just left out in this regulatory limbo, no wonder this recovery has taken so long to finally get some steam behind it. All right, that's wonderful. But here's the problem. Those voters in the middle, that 20% of voters that are more emotionally driven, that aren't junkies like we are, the idea that Jon Hickenlooper isn't giving us decisive leadership, all right, but he's a remarkably likable guy. I find him to be an engaging man. I love having him on the show. I love joking with him. You know, he's an interesting, compelling individual, and with his odd sense of humor in those commercials, which I think are starting to wear thin. Going into the shower this time is not going to be as funny as it was a couple years ago. How do you reach those people in the middle as well as Hick does?
The people I'm talking to, I think they've decided that we've moved from isn't that quirky, kind of cute, to what's up with that? And the Dunlap decision, I think, put an exclamation point on it, John. They're frustrated at the lack of leadership and the lack of a willingness to make tough decisions, the lack of a willingness to even have an agenda. I mean, what is the Hickenlooper agenda? I don't know. Is it still TBD, to be determined? Apparently so. He's very reactionary. He may be a great guy, as you described, to have a beer with or shoot a game of pool with, but I think he's failed to lead this state as governor, and that's where I'm going to make my case. People expect more from Colorado. This is the greatest state in the greatest nation on God's green earth. But right now we're making excuses for Colorado. We're explaining about Colorado. We're middle of the pack, and Colorado's never been middle of the pack. This is the state that's been big enough for all of our dreams. Yours, mine, a whole lot of people out there. Right now, if you ask them how you feeling, they might say they're okay. But feeling great, feeling like a Coloradan again, not so much so.
All right, let me put you on some specifics. Right? He, you say, has no agenda. Now, I got to tell you, I'm not too sure what the agenda is either. So let's talk about what we do know. What is your agenda for Colorado? When you get in there, give me some specifics. Give me some meat. What is it that we're going to see that's different, and in what order?
Day one, and this all fits under a general theme of, do you trust people or do you trust government? And I know you're a people person as opposed to a government supporter, so I think you'll understand this. Day one, we're going to recognize that we trust in people, and how do you liberate people? How do you lift people up? How do you encourage people and celebrate their genius again? And that's by getting government out of the way. The federal government's creating about 80,000 pages of regulations every year. The state's fallen with another 11, 12, 14,000 in the last 3 years. In addition to the federal government, we're going to go through every single thing government does. Every agency, every function, every rule, every regulation. If it isn't pro-opportunity, pro-job, pro-individual liberty and freedom, we're going to get rid of it. Now, that's not just idle words. There's a roadmap to follow.
Let me push you on this, because that's a wonderful thing to say. We're going to go through every line, and we're going to get rid of it. Getting rid of things, you remember Reagan saying, there's nothing closer to immortality than a new government program. Getting rid of bureaucracy is a difficult thing. It is entwined. It's like a root system of a weed. You can't get it out. It grows back. Give me some specifics. What do you want to look for, and how are you going to judge whether or not this can be taken care of, and will you do what Obama does and just say, I'm going to use my pen?
Some of it we can actually do at the executive level by changing the culture. Priority-based budgeting is what it's called. You can incentivize and you can disincent bad behavior. So we can shorten the process for getting permits and licenses and yeses and nos out of government. We can reduce the burden of government at the executive level. Some of that I can do directly, and we can start that day one. The other thing that we can do, though, is eliminate needless regulation. Utah did this, John, and you're right. The old farmer in me knows exactly what you're talking about in pulling out the root and all of a weed, and that's what we've got to do. Some regulations we'll absolutely have to eliminate. Utah got rid of 368. That was about 20% of all the regulations they had, and it was Utah. It wasn't like it was California or a state completely out of control. There is a bunch of stuff out there that you scratch your head and wonder, why are we doing this? We're licensing goldfish sales in Colorado. Goldfish. I mean, think about it. It takes 13 months for a friend of mine to get a permit to put water that they pump out of an oil well back down in the ground. Same place he got it from. 13 months he waits for government to give him an answer. That's just pure nonsense.
There was a time before, just before Ritter took office, Colorado was first in the nation in waiting time for a regulation for an oil well. The fastest, within like 15 days. Got it, here it is. And within a couple of years, we dropped to number 50. And you wonder why companies say, you know what, I'll just go up to Wyoming. I'll move the rig up there where I can get an answer instead of waiting months.
And that's exactly what's happened. This isn't just idle chatter. I had a friend of mine who raises the money to invest in doing just exactly that business. He said, my investors are done. He said, you don't win this election, Bob. He said, we've spent our last dime in Colorado. Those are real jobs. You might say, well, it's oil and gas. They employ people, and they supply us with the energy, and we're blessed with an abundance of it here.
The personal level of a campaign is always amazing because people take it very personally. Latest attack was because you got an endorsement from the governor of Texas, and there is an indictment, not a not a conviction, an indictment of something. Therefore, you must be a bad candidate. Give me your response to this.
If you know anything about Texas politics, you know about Travis County, and this is the way they play. It's a very liberal area. This is Austin. And David Axelrod, one of the biggest names in Democrat politics, and the New York Times editorial board have both come to the defense of Rick Perry and said this is a gross overreach. Gross over. I mean, this is just pure silly. What he did is there was the local DA was arrested for driving under the influence, or driving while impaired, I'm not sure which, but seriously drunk. And he said, you know, we got a problem here. Unless you resign, I'm not going to continue to send taxpayer funding your way. I'll veto that funding. And he did. He did. And they call him the abuser of power. Who was abusing their position? Again, the New York Times and David Axelrod defended him. I'm not embarrassed at all. In fact, I'm quite proud. Rick Perry, that's a state to emulate. Low taxes, lots of jobs. They have embraced and elevated individuals and small business, and that's a place where a lot of our businesses, unfortunately, have been going.
Well, Texas is wonderful.
Doing a great job.
With the exception of it being full of Texans, it's a pretty cool place. All right, you talked about the guy with the DUI. Let me ask you the question. As these things get personal, you know, the amount of opposition research is a nice term to find out, you know, the stupid thing you said on a radio show 3 years ago that you said in jest, or, you know, and it goes both ways, that sooner or later something's going to pop out that will, you know, they're looking for the macaca moment. They're looking for that killer moment. Tell me, you want to cop to the DUI now, the spousal abuse? I mean, this is the opportunity. if you want a graceful way out, now's the time. What should we expect, and anything you want to get off your chest?
My life's been a pretty open book for a long time, John. I think whatever's out there has probably already been exposed. Will games get played in politics? Yeah, because it's politics, and some of it's silly, and some of it goes beyond silly. I'm very proud of my Colorado heritage and the life I've lived here. Claudia and I have been blessed abundantly, and we're ready to step up and try to lead this state. Will there be people take shots at us? I guess that happens. We're going to try to rise above that. And Colorado's my home. I want it to be my home for forever, and we're going to try to make it proud, not less than that.
Less than a minute, especially to those people who are more emotionally driven, in the middle. What's the pitch to them? What do you want them to know to get that vote?
I want them to think about the Colorado they'd like this to be. And I think it's the same state I want this to be. A full employment state, not a state that's still trying to get there, but a state that really is there. An opportunity state, not just jobs, not entry-level jobs, part-time jobs, but real career opportunities. A place where your kids can stay here and call this their home and make a career out of it as well. Let's be that shining city on the hill. When he used to say that, I always assumed he was looking uphill, right here to Colorado. Doesn't get any better than this.
Bob, best of luck. Thank you for spending some time with us.
Thank you, John.
Thank you for spending time with us. Check out the Independence Institute, independenceinstitute.org, and we'll see you next week.